This audio-video recording provides information on the Project Fair School suggestion for methodologies to be practiced in schools, considering the project context and structured in the topic 4 of the Project Capacity Building program. Before you start your training on this specific topic, be so kind to access the Learn More Before Starting area on the project website, read the tutorial, and also read the guidelines Fair School methodology, especially for topic 4, methodology to be used at school. Familiarize yourself with chapter 3.1. A quick overview of the content of this audio-video recording. First, the European education dimension in just 3 dates to contextualize also the project development, an overview of the methodology as such, and 6 subtopics which are composed of very specific approaches suggested by the project activities. The first one is about classroom management, the second connected to group building activities, the third cooperative learning, the fourth project-based teaching, the fifth circle conversations, and the sixth inequalities and injustice as thematic to be incorporated in the teaching catalog. First, a swift overview of the European Union's efforts towards more cohesion in the education and training sphere in Europe, and to some extent to the associated countries as well. The starting point is the COMET program, which stands for European Community Action Program for Education and Training for Technology, and that was established in July 1987. Later, at a later stage, the European member states provided impetus for the education and training systems via integrating more concrete features, which are youth and sports. This led to enhanced work programs such as Socrates or the lifelong learning programs, which most recent outcome is the Erasmus Plus program started in 2014 and developing until 2027. A few notes on the methodology. The details of the methodology suggested by Project Fair School can be found in the project compendium entitled Fair School Methodology. The overall inclusive pedagogy contains methods targeting all students, focusing on building a fair school that enables effective learning for all, considering both core competences, but also 21st century skills. The suggested methods can be carried out by all teachers, and the project approaches are meant like an inspirational catalog. The actual methods to try out in the classrooms should be chosen based on its realities, such as challenges and needs. This should be combined with a view towards strategic goals globally set by the school. In the compendium, a matrix of additional methodology can be found, providing an overview of their characteristics and purposes. All methods can be applied in the classroom, considering an average of 20 to 30 students. In some of the exercises, the classroom could be organized into a few smaller groups for some of the activities to ensure more engagement from the learner. All methods can be applied by teachers, though some of them are slightly more complex than others, and for instance, the circle conversation methodology. Here, it is recommended to start with topics that are easily accessible, then progressively develop towards more challenging topics. Now, what is classroom management? Basically, it's defining the operations in details. Classroom management is about setting a frame in the classroom that enables a safe, fair, and developing a learning environment in which all students can thrive and develop. This should be done in an inclusive approach involving the students. The role of the teacher in the class can be compared with the role of a manager setting the frame. Classroom management consists of a variety of methods to support the teachers in setting this frame. This section of the methodology proposed by the project is inspired by researchers Anderson and Porup from 2017 works. Summarizing, Classroom management refers to the strategies teachers use to support and facilitate learning in the classroom. Effective classroom management is important for student achievement because it creates an environment that minimizes disruptions, maximizes instruction time, and encourages students to engage in learning. Summarizing, classroom management is about defining strategies to facilitate learning in the classroom. It's about the student achievement and building environment that will engage the student more actively in the learning. Each of the approaches and methodology introduced by the next slide can be found in detail in the guideline of the methodology from the Project Fair School. Details of the subtopic 1 practice is provided in the guideline for methodology. The project proposes 4 pillars to structure classroom management. The first is about giving clear instructions before any assignment. This would be done by answering to the question, why should you learn this? Which provide a meaning to the instructions and the assignment that are planned for the management of the classroom. Here, it is about precising content and practice approach. Second, active and constructing responses. This is projected to strengthen the relationship with the students. This feature of this pillar of the classroom management is about practicing individual conversations with students in the classroom during a few minutes to consolidate the relationship with the students. Third, positive behaviors correction. This is planned when behavior are considered inadequate and disturbs the classroom learning environment. In this case, teachers practice individual and private interventions in the classroom during a few minutes. Fourth, effective statements and conversations. These also contribute to correct disturbing behaviors and to strengthen the relationship with the students. And in this case, it's also to correct these behaviors. And here, the approach consists in the teacher providing information as a person, rather than a formal pedagogical setting in which the teacher would tell the student what to do or not to do. Let's take more time on the subtopic classroom management and affective statement. This practice is suitable for situations when the behavior of the students will be perceived as out of place and disturbing the learning of the class, or at least their own learning. This might be a student not paying attention, not behaving according to the ground rules, or not following the instruction given. This comes from research studies from Hansberry in 2016 and Costello et al. In 2009. This practice is implemented within individual interventions in the classroom or in more informal contexts such as outdoor during a few minutes. Affective statements focus on giving a piece of information about the teacher as a person rather than just telling the student what to do or not to do. Revealing a piece of yourself helps building a respectful relationship. The teacher might fear that expressing feelings might take or make them vulnerable or seem weak. However, the opposite often happens, and it builds empathy between the teacher and the student. This is a good starting point for a deeper conversation about how to move forward. It is very important that the affective statements are given in private to ensure that the student does not get embarrassed in front of the classmates, triggering them into defense responses. Also, outcomes from the research from Hansberry, Costello. As a follow-up, an effective statement can be followed up with pertinent inquiries. It is also possible to move from here into a restorative conversation. Subtopic 2 addresses group building activities. Here we can ask ourselves, what is group building? Globally, it's creating a shared vision towards a common objective. Now, basics of group dynamics is rooted in performing as one, and we precise almost because it's obvious that it's quite difficult to reach a 100% agreement on different vision and objectives, but at least the vast majority of the participants would agree with the vision and the objective. This can be connected to the psychologist Bruce Tuckman theory, which is composed in 4 pillars, starting with forming, in which the participants of a group would start knowing each other and sharing experience, etc., until at a certain point a possible storm, which is symbolized, illustrated here, to explain strong disagreement and sometimes conflicts if it happens. Then after this phase they would norm, which is basically agreeing with this shared vision and objective, and they would start performing, which is basically implementing an activity, developing the idea and obtaining, reaching, achieving the results that were planned. Now, this group dynamics can also be understood as a certain number of activities that are connected with the individuals and the group as such. The first one is to attend regularly. It's obvious that participating regularly to the group activities is a proof of engagement. And of course, participating in discussion and in the activity as such shows engagement as well. And finally, being sensitive to each other, which is encompassing a vast number of competences and skills, from understanding each other to empathy, etc. And finally, what is very important as well is to be able to track the dynamics of the groups via interviews, via questionnaires, providing to the group an information about where they are. Subtopic 2 is details can be found in the guideline Fair School methodology. Appreciate interviews is the first exercise that we propose in the project, and its objective is to build the group class or smaller teams in the class who have to work together for an extended period of time. To help build the class community, create positive relations in the class, stimulate empathy, communication, and cooperation. This is also to turn the focus towards what works and develop ideas about how to do more of that. The whole class can be participating in this activity, or smaller teams of 4-6 individuals. There is an interview guides found in the guidelines focusing on the teamwork. It must be adapted, of course, to the specific focus. The second exercise that the project proposes, witnessing exercise, to turn the focus towards what work well also, and the students' quality and values and aspirations. It assists building a positive community by having the students witnesses each other for what they value and try to achieve for the greater good. In this case, the group size can also be basically the whole classroom, or individuals up to 3 or 5, and the duration of the exercise could be between 30 and 60 minutes depending on the size and the age of the students. Let's take a few minutes on appreciative interviews as one of the group building activities suggested by the project. Appreciative interviews aim at building the group class or smaller teams in the class who have to work together for an extended period of time. The practice assists build the class community, create positive relation in the class, stimulate empathy, communication, and cooperation. Appreciative interviews aim at turning the focus towards what works and develop ideas about how to do more of that. This practice can be implemented with the whole class or with teams of 4-6 persons during approximately 30 to 40 minutes. Interview ideas are suggested in the guidelines, Fair School methodology, focusing on teamwork, though it must be adapted to the specific reality of the school. Subtopic 3 addresses cooperative learning. Cooperative learning is an instructional and pedagogical strategy that organizes students into smaller groups to work together on common tasks with the purpose of maximizing both their own as well as others learning. Cooperative learning has been developed by Spencer Kagan. Now, the smooth operation application and cooperative learning requires that the class is used to working in this format, that the room settings allows working in teams, supporting routines are in place, and the team has been built already, etc. You may find more instructional information on the guideline, of course. Kagan, as an expert, has worked on developing cooperative learning structures together with colleagues and teachers, and now has more than 200 different structures, of which a few will be presented in this audio-video recording. The proposals introduced by this material is connected to research by Kagan and Stevles from 2016. The first of the cooperative learning exercise is entitled Ping Pong Couples, and academic goals or pedagogical goals are set to give relative short and concise answers, and social goals to take turns and listen actively. The group size may be the whole class or divided in pairs. There is a duration suggested of 5-10 minutes, and more procedures can be found in the guideline. The second is pairs of time. Academic goals is to talk coherently about a given complex topic, to adjust level to a certain detail to a certain time span, and social goals to share in an engaging way, to listen actively, to support the others through questions, and to give constructive feedback. Indeed, here as well, the whole class can participate or pairs of students in the class. And the activity, depending on the age of the student, would span 5 to 20 minutes. The third is entitled 3-step interviews, and the academic goals is to ask good open questions, to inquire more in depth into a topic, to sum up ideas and thoughts of others. And social goals are to listen actively, to understand an issue from someone else's perspective, to remember the perspective of others, time management, to take turn, to acknowledge and appreciate everyone's contribution. And here, the whole class also can participate as one or in teams of 4, with a duration estimated between 15 and 30 minutes. And finally, the fourth one is entitled One for All, in which academic goals is to write, to nuance their answers. Social goals are about time management, courage to share even when insecure, express disagreement in a constructive way, dialogue, and courage to stand before the class. Here, the whole class can participate as one or teams of 4 students, and an estimated time of 10 to 20 minutes. On subtopic 3, cooperative learning, we propose to develop more on one-for-all practice, which academic goal is to write nuanced answers from students, and social goals connect with time management, courage to share even when insecure, express disagreement in a constructive way, dialogue, courage to stand before the class. The group size for this practice can be the whole class or teams of 4 participants. The preparation questions have a lot of variation that we propose in the manual. This exercise should take 10 to 20 minutes depending on the complexity of the questions approached by the teachers and the classroom, which can be as diverse as explaining a math formula, the most important theme in the text, 3 things to remember about an historical period, how to define a situation, etc., etc. Subtopic 4 addresses project-based learning. Here, it proposes 2 different exercises. The first one is a guideline to project-based teaching, in which the teacher and the class would identify a real-life challenge, design the project on the basis of this challenge, co-create the plan, considering methodology, objectives, audiences, and expected results, supervise the progress, and assess the whole activity. The second exercise connects to inclusion of inequality and injustice topics in the project that is planned and proposed by the class. This because most of the real life challenges may interlink with such topics. And such topics of inequality can be connected to health, to racism in the labor market, gender inequality in education, implementing sustainability in a just way, or asking the question on how to create a safer and more fair school, access to health for all, low social mobility, in-group versus out-group behavior, etc., etc. On project-based learning, we propose to spend a few minutes on including inequalities and injustice topics in the pedagogical environment of the school. How to promote equality and diversity in the classroom is maybe the starting point would be to ask ourselves what is equality and diversity. It's commonly agreed that equality and diversity, or multiculturalism, is the idea of promoting and accepting the differences between people. More specifically, equality is about ensuring individuals are treated fairly and equally, no matter their race, gender, age, disability situation, spiritual beliefs, or orientations. Diversity is about recognizing and respecting these differences to create an all-inclusive atmosphere. Now, how to practice this at school? Promoting equality and diversity in the classroom needs to be a challenge, and it's something that all students and teachers and school staff globally should be familiar with from an early age. This means setting clear rules in regards to how people should be treated, challenging any negative attitudes, treating all staff and students fairly and equally, creating an all-inclusive culture for staff and students, avoiding stereotypes in example and resources, using resources with multicultural themes, actively promoting multiculturalism in lessons, planning lessons that reflect the diversity of the classroom and the school at large, ensuring all students have equal access to opportunities and participation, making sure that learning materials do not discriminate against anyone and are adapted where necessary, which means large print or audio tape format when it's necessary, using a variety of teaching methods, using a variety of assessment methods, and for instance ensuring policies and procedures do not discriminate against anyone. Circle conversations. The circle conversations are sessions where the class gather in a circle to talk about a certain issue. The purpose is to build positive relations and a sense of community and belonging in the class through giving all students an equal voice as well as structure that makes it easier to listen to the different perspectives of the classmates. The circle conversations furthermore teach restorative thinking, as it is very much about doing things with the students. The following descriptions, we identified 7 suggestions on circle conversations, and practical methods are inspired by Hansberry in 2016, Costello 2009, Evans and Vandering in 2016, and Winslade and Williams in 2012. The description that's 6 in the next slide describes the general structure of circle conversation that can be adapted to different purposes, including restorative purposes, which we'll get back into the next section. Regarding circle conversations, the consortium suggests a number of exercises and practice, and to facilitate more inclusive training, we particularly recommend to also follow with the guideline document Fair School methodology. Now, the first circle conversation suggested by the project is about classroom ground rules. And this purpose is to setting classroom ground rules through circle conversation is to involve students in setting the rules they believe are necessary for a positive and safe learning environment. In this way, they can easier take ownership over the rules and feels more committed to live up to them. The second one is about check-in. This is a relatively fast circle to get the class to tune into each other and build a sense of community. The third one is about learning goals, and this purposes to real-life challenge may be interlinked with such topics. The purpose of this kind of circle is to involve the students in setting goals for their own learning. They change from becoming passive receivers of education to active participants and planners. The fourth one is about monitoring progress, which the purpose is this kind of circle is to involve the students in monitoring their own learning, progress and efforts. They change again in this way from becoming passive receivers of education to active participants and planner. In this way, they would assume, of course, ownership over their own learning and build competences related to the 21st century skills on career and life, such as initiative, self-direction, productivity, accountability, leadership, and responsibility. This form of circle conversation fits well during and at the end of longer projects of units. I propose to develop further on a specific circle conversation about learning goals. The purpose of this kind of circle is to involve the students in setting goals for their own learning. They change from becoming passive receivers of education to active participants and planners. In this way, they will assume ownership over their own learning and build competencies related to the 21st century skills on career and life, such as initiative, self-direction, productivity, accountability, leadership, and responsibility. This kind of circle conversation fits well before starting up a new project, a unit, or a topic. Questions asked or shared within the group can be, for instance, what is your learning goal for this week, for this topic, for this project? Or what is something you need in order to get your work done today, this week or the next weeks? Or also, which steps will you complete this week in your project? Finally, for instance, what will you commit to in your team to make sure your cooperation runs efficiently this week? The fifth circle is on inclusion, and the class is used to the circle conversation. It means that you would apply this practice exercise once you have already organized a series of circle conversations in which the students are now familiar with all the settings. If the class is used to this circle conversations format, this format can be used to share and explore more personal experience. For instance, discrimination, marginalization, prejudice, and so comparable form of stereotype and prejudice that students have been possibly victims. Now, the next one is proactive circle. The proactive circles are similar to the circle conversation, setting general rules for being in the class. It can be an idea to set specific ground rules for a school trip, for instance, to prevent potential issues. The last one is checkout, and it's also comparable to the check-in, a fast and relatively simple circle conversation to the end of the day or the week with a positive group feeling. On subtopic 6, we propose to come back on details with role-playing dominant ideas. As role-plays exercise gives students the opportunity to assume the role of a person or act out of a given situation. These roles can be performed by individual students in pairs or in groups, which can play out a more complex scenario. Role-plays engage students in real-life situation or scenario that can be stressful, unfamiliar, complex, or even controversial, which requires them to examine personal feelings towards others and their circumstances. Unlike simulations and games which often are planned, structured activities and can last over a long period of time, role-play exercises are usually short, spontaneous presentations, but also can be prearranged research assignments. The benefits of role-playing can be effectively used in the classroom to motivate and engage students, enhance current teaching strategies, provide real-world scenarios to help students learn skills used in real-world situations such as negotiation, debate, teamwork, cooperation, persuasion, etc., or provide opportunities for critical observations of peers. Summarizing, role plays can be effectively used in the classroom to provide real-world scenarios to assist students learn.